Hi, this is Joe again with another review. And since I haven't done a sports themed video in a while, I want to do one now. But instead of doing a movie, I'm going to be doing a documentary actually. As a matter of fact, it's the first documentary that I ever owned. And of course, as you can tell from my background here, that I'm a pretty big Met fan. And so that's the documentary I'm going to be doing for you. It actually came out in the magical year of 1986, and that is the old VHS video, because now, it's not on DVD or anything. It's called The Amazing Era, the 25th anniversary of the New York Mets. Well, like I said, it came out I believe it came out like in mid-June of 1986. And of course, this is what the back cover looks like, and it's 71 minutes. It's an hour and 11 minutes long, in case if you're not good at math. Because this documentary goes back to well, it's actually 24 years actually. Because this came out in the 25th season of the Mets, which was 86. Of course, also the same, which was made by Major League Baseball Productions. Remember the Phoenix Group, actually, the same production company that produced the television show The Baseball Bunch. But this is also the Astros. The Houston Astros also had a 25th anniversary video the same year as well. So because both teams came in the same year, nationally in the same year. But this video chronicles the history of the Mets before they even were formed. The reason why they were formed from the first year of 1962 all the way through going into the 1986 season. But they did show a couple of highlights of the 86 season, but it's all the way at the end of the video. But there's one particular fact that it didn't put into this video, into how the Mets were made. As a matter of fact, I put this into my video called "The Schooling of the New York Mets." And I did a two-part video. One, how the Mets were schooled by Major League Baseball, just about every year. Another one, how the Mets management over the years schooled by players and their fans. But in this video, it didn't include the fact that the reason why the Mets were formed to begin with was we had two National League teams here in New York, called the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants. And they were here almost since the formation of baseball practice, almost. But the Giants, they were original National League team, the National League saw in 1876, and the Brooklyn Dodgers, they were around then, but they didn't come into the National League until 1890. So from 1890 to 1957, New York City was a 2 or 3-team town. Well, not exactly a 3-team town. I mean, the Yankees didn't come into formation until 1901 as a professional team when the American League was formed. But anyway, we were usually traditionally a National League town with two teams in New York City. So when the Dodgers and Giants moved out, the New York City wanted to have, because it was such a disaster of the two teams left, they wanted to have another team in here. And originally they wanted to get the Phillies to move up here, because at that time, in 1957, the Phillies were a god-awful team. Meanwhile, the National League wouldn't make the move, and the National League president at the time, I think it was Warren Giles, says, "Who needs New York?" So French Rickey got together, who was pretty much semi-retired, or not retired by then. He got together with a prominent New York City attorney named Bill Shea, the guy who Shea Stadium was eventually named after, and they got together and formed the Continental League. And because they decided to form, because since the National League won't allow another team in New York City, or because nationally, when the Dodgers and Giants moved out, the hierarchy in Major League Baseball, not only in the National League, but Major League Baseball in general, wanted to leave New York City to the Yankees. Because the Yankees were the so-called best franchise in baseball, you know, the most iconic franchise because they won so much. Even though, like I said earlier, New York City wasn't actually town inspired the Yankees winning all the time, especially in those days, in the late 50s and early 60s. So when Bill Shea and Brad Friedman got together and made Continental League, they scared Major League Baseball. They have competition. Maybe would have been a threat to Major League Baseball, maybe the threat of the antitrust laws. Even though baseball is exempt, it's still exempt from antitrust laws. So they got scared over the National League, got scared, and said, "Okay, we put a new team in here." But they not only they added the Mets, but they also added the Astros. But the year before, in 1961, the American League decided to beat out the Mets and expanded, added a brand new Washington Senators franchise, because the original franchise moved to Minnesota, became the Twins. So in 1961, they expanded with two new teams in the American League, the Angels, which at that time was called Los Angeles Angels at the time, and a brand new Washington Senators franchise. And then of course the next year, in 1962, that's when the Mets played their first season. So I know I repeat all that stuff in my, schooling on the Mets video, but I decided to to mention that again in case those of you who haven't seen that one. So that's what Chronicle, and that's not the part where it says the National League says who needs New York. So of course then they decided to hire Casey Stengel as a manager for the Mets, the first manager. But they also used to forget to mention the fact that particularly in 63 and 64, before Casey had to eventually retire at 65 because of a broken hip and never healed properly, he used to fall asleep in the dugout and all this type of stuff. But he defected the press, the media, going after the players because that's how bad the Mets were. Because they lost 120 games in the National League, still a Major League record. The only team that came close was, I think, in 2002 or 2003, I think it was, when the Tigers lost 119 games, and then they won the last 5 games in a row to avoid tying or possibly even breaking their record. And when it was guaranteed that they were not going to break the Mets record, they were celebrating with champagne in the locker room, which ticked me off because I wanted that record to be broken, and because I wanted the Mets to get off that stigma of being the worst team in baseball history. But the first tour, that's how they tracked in that part. And then, what I have to say, for those of you who don't have this video was divided into 4 parts. The first part was called the early years, which I pretty much covered just now. And then of course the next segment was the championship years, which went from 1966 to 73, and which of course covered the Mets building what would eventually become the 1969 World Championship team. And then that segment covered from 66, when the Mets started to build the possible championship team. And then it ended with the 1973 World Series. They did go over the 73 World Series. The death of Gil Hodges, who was the manager of the Mets at that time. And of course when Yogi Berra taking over, of course he didn't cover Yogi Berra's most famous line, "It ain't over till it's over." They didn't mention that line in this documentary. They did mention the "You Gotta Believe" rally cry. They did do that, because that was also important for that year as well. And like I said, that segment ended with the 73 World Series, where the Mets lost to Oakland. Of course, there was the time when Oakland won 3 in a row, and there wouldn't be another team that won 3 years in a row to the Yankees from 1998 to 2000. So it goes to show you how rare it is to win 2 or 3 championships in a row, especially in the era of the playoffs, in the playoff format era. And of course, in this segment, which was from 1974 to 1979, which was called the down years. We're going to show you how, after the Mets lost the World Series in '73, how much of a downfall the Mets went, because M. Don Grant didn't spend any money, and of course, the most infamous moment during those 5 or 6 years. The Midnight Massacre. Now, of course, anybody who was a Mets fan knows what it is. It was like a month before my 6th birthday. So that's how long ago it was. And I'm 43 now. So it tells you how long ago that was. And what it was when the Mets traded Tom Seaver to Cincinnati. When it was about to be traded, it looks like he might be traded anyway. But what really happened was that, I know the story from Jack Lang. That's how I know the story from. And never met the guy personally. God bless him. You know, he passed away a few years ago, and he was a writer for, I think, the Daily News at the time. And he was like a middleman between Tom Seaver and the Mets management. He pretty much worked out a deal that Tom Seaver would accept an extension of his contract, which players and management do today when they extend somebody's contract or an existing contract. In those days, they just got rid of the reserve clause like 2 years earlier. But until the time where it was hard for players and management to get extensions of the contract and big raises like they do today. So Seaver agreed to it, and then there was an article in the New York Daily News written by Jack Lang, Jack Lang's son was writing for them, whose son was working for the Mets. So he had a little personal stake in that thing. He wrote a column, or Jack Lang wrote a column, saying that Tom Seaver's wife, Nancy Seaver, was jealous of Ruth Ryan and Norman Ryan for making all that money in California, because at that time Ryan was working for, or pitching for, the Cardinals at that time. I mean, not Cardinals, I mean the Angels, the California Angels. And they were so jealous of, because Gene Autry, who owned the Angels then, gave Ryan this big contract, and Seaver was making peanuts with the Mets and flying with Grant. And so I was jealous that they're saying they were jealous of Norman Ryan for making all that money. So Seaver says, that's it. He got up and says, Tom, and he contacting the Mets, and he says, Tom, the Mets management, he says, Tom, the whole deal's off. And that's when he got traded to Cincinnati. And so that was the midnight, and that's what pretty much covered the Mets, that particular segment of the show. The last segment of the video was from 1980 to 1985, which was called the Comeback Years. And it shows when the Mets were sold from the original owners to Nelson Doubleday and Fred Wilpon. Of course, nowadays it's fully owned on the Mets franchise since 2002. I think it's 2002, 2003. They're fully owned by Phil Wilpon, and you can see the downturn of the Mets because Wilpon fully owns the team. So how the Mets, which was sold from the original owners, or at least the daughter of the original owner, to the Sterling Company, to Wilpon and Doubleday, and how they hired Frank Cashin, how they started to build the Mets up, build the Mets back up, because the minor leagues were horrible, the minor league teams were horrible. There was no real prospects in the minor league level in 1980. And then they drafted a guy like Strawberry, drafted Good, and Cashin started to make trades. They traded for Darling, they traded for Cincinnati. Well, Cincinnati, it wasn't mentioned the Cincinnati trade, but they mentioned the two big trades, which was, of course, Keith Hernandez in '83, and then Gary Carter. And Keith mentioned his side of the story about how he found out how he was traded and how he was, because he had that clause in his contract to cancel the deal. What's called the 10-5 rule. He spent 10 years with one team, and 10 years in major leagues, and with at least the last 5 with your current team you're playing for. And he could have canceled. He could have revoked his no trade clause, but he decided to agree to the deal and stay with the Mets. And then, of course, the very next year, the Mets became a contender in '84, because that's the year the Gooden came up. And of course, they made the deal for Gary Carter, and they detailed the '85 season. For a good chunk of the '85 season, they talking about how not only Hernandez but Cora as well, how they brought some exciting winning baseball back to the New York Mets organization. And then of course it leads into the '86 season, which was about a quarter of the way through when the video came out. And of course they showed highlights at the end of the film how the Mets are playing exciting ball. And of course during the closing credits they showed a whole bunch of highlights from '62 all the way up to '85. Or couple of highlights from the '86 just before the video came out. So some very early clips of the '86 season is on this video, but if you blink, you missed it. But as for the video itself, I think it's definitely one of the better. Excuse me, I'm looking at my watch for the time here. I think this is still one of the best documentary videos, sports video. If you want to know about the history of a franchise, unfortunately, there's not that many sports videos out there today. Unfortunately, in the age of the DVDs, that goes over the history of a franchise anymore. I know that a couple of years ago, the Mets had the 50th anniversary season, and I was surprised as hell that Major League Baseball Productions, the video production company for Major League Baseball, did not come out with a 50th anniversary video of the history of the New York Mets. You know why? Because I think that Major League Baseball is still embarrassed by having this franchise playing to this day. And at least I think so. I think they're embarrassed by the Mets. Simply because, like I said at the top, in my screwing of the Mets video, they were forced to put the Mets in here. Pretty much at least blackmail. They have a National League franchise in New York City. So I think that because of that, I think that because the 25th anniversary was bigger at that time than the 50th anniversary is today. And the Mets were the first, which now people don't give credit for. And the New York Mets are the first, or was the first expansion team to win the World Series. Not only to make it the World Series, but to win it. As a matter of fact, they were the first franchise to win 2 of them. And as a matter of fact, there were 3 teams, 3 expansion teams that has won twice. The Mets, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Florida/Miami Marlins. Both those 3 franchises have won 2 championships. In the case of the Blue Jays, they won back-to-back years. The Mets, of course, won twice. Of course, Kansas City almost won the second championship. So if the Royals had won, they would have, become the 4th expansion franchise to win 2 championships. So that's my video of An Amazing Era. Well, there's one thing I forgot to mention about the Amazing Era. The 4 segments, the 4 parts of this video, were all hosted by somebody. The first part, which was the early years, that was hosted by Gene Shalit from the Today Show. Another thing he does the Today Show, the Today Show anymore. He used to do the movie reviews for the Today Show. The second part, which was the championship years, was hosted by former New York City Mayor John Lindsay, who has since passed away. The third part, which was the down years, was hosted by comic Ronnie Dangerfield, who also since passed away. And the last segment, which was the comeback years, was hosted by actress Glenn Close. I feel like I should give them, mention them in this thing. So that's my video of An Amazing Era. Of course, quite obviously, this video is dedicated to all the Met fans who rooted for this team since 1962. Me, I wasn't born yet. I was born like 9 years later, so 1971. So I've been a fan from the 70s, or the mid-late 70s toward the 80s. So I grew up with the '86 team. That's why I have such an affection for the '86 Met team. So I'm a review of Amazin Era. Unfortunately, I don't know if you can even get this video anywhere, unless maybe somebody's selling it on eBay or Craigslist or something. They can get this video. I'm not going to sell it. So don't ask me to pay for a price for this video. I'm not selling this thing. So please click on the video. Please rate it. Feel free to comment on. Please subscribe to my channel, and please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time. And please check out my other videos as well.